And the second part of the introduction is really a motivational part, and it is also a very informative part, and it's a very important part, I would say, based on my experience, which is plenty. I think this is very important. The earlier in life you hear about this, you understand this, it's important. And in this part of introduction, we ask this question, what one needs to do to succeed on this job. All of us, when we join a job or when we're doing a job, we want success, right? Success may come in different ways. We may have different thinking about what success is. Maybe for some, success is recognition. They want to be recognized for the good work they are doing in their work. Success may mean promotion. So employees expect that when they do good work, they will be in line for future promotions, or some career benefits will follow from good job performance, or maybe just people want to feel satisfaction, job satisfaction, or maybe self-satisfaction. So we need to understand what type of job performance will get you these things. Each of these may be considered as a yardstick for success on the job. Different people may consider different of these as more important for them. But each one of us is looking for one or more of these from his job. Then what type of performance, if he shows he's going to get this? Is hard work going to get that? If he works 2 hours extra every day in his work, if he comes 1 hour early and leaves 1 hour late, will he be recognized? Will he be considered promotion? Will he be considered for career benefits, job satisfaction, or will he get self-satisfaction? This is the question that we need to ask. Often you may have heard statements like, what we need to do is, we need to work smart. Not necessarily work hard, we need to work smart. Well, and other ways you might have heard. But we have something more systematic in this program. Why the need for this question arises in the first place is because studies have shown, our own experience has shown, that most employees, 80% of employees around the world, in every country, in every culture, feel that they are not getting adequate recognition for the hard work they do. 80% of employees, 80% plus of employees feel that they are not getting adequate recognition for the hard work they do. Which means only about 10 or 20% of employees are really satisfied with the way they are treated by the employer in terms of the benefit that they wanted from the previous slide: recognition, reward, promotion, self-satisfaction, and so on. So we want to find out in this part of the introduction why. Why is it that so many people are dissatisfied? And what is it that they need to do differently in order for them to come from the 80% and get into the 10-20% people who are satisfied, who get what they expected, or maybe even more than what they think they deserve. And we will show that recognition comes when you provide leadership on your job. Recognition comes when you provide leadership on your job. Then, of course, the obvious question comes, what is leadership? Well, when we think about What is leadership? Let me get back to the previous slide. When we think about leadership, what comes to our mind? What does a leader do? What does a leader do which is different from what others do, or from what an employee does, or what a manager does? What is the different things that the leaders do? So let's try to understand that. And we would like to present that to you by saying, and we would like you to understand it in that manner for the purpose of training and education, is that each employee, doesn't matter at what level he's working inside the organization, he's playing two roles. There are two roles he is playing, he's expected to play. One we will call the management role or manager role, and the other is a leadership role. Manager role is basically he's been given certain job responsibilities. He needs to fulfill those job responsibilities satisfactorily, or he is given certain targets and he has to meet those targets. So the management role is the targets that have been given to him, typically in the form of a job description, and he has to show that he has completed or met those targets. And then what is leadership? We will see what does leadership mean. But first let us look at what is this manager role, or what we can call the job description role that people have. So we said that each employee has a job description, and he sits down with his superior or his boss, and they work out certain targets for him that this employee must achieve during the year. Typically, they will sit together once a year and they work out the targets for that employee based on his job description. Targets may range to in all parts, relate to all different parts of his work, what targets he has to meet. So we say like this: the manager role, doesn't matter your resignation is not a manager, doesn't matter, whatever is your role, we'll say it's a manager. Part of the role is oriented towards, manager roles are oriented towards meeting the targets. Managers are given targets and it is their job to meet those targets. And in order to meet the target, if he's a department manager, he has to set the policies and objectives of the department. If he's a team leader, he has to set the policies and objectives of the team. Otherwise, he has to set his own work policies and objectives for his work. Whatever targets have been given, the employee has to plan his work. Plan his work in order to be able to achieve the targets that have been given to him. He can't make an excuse later on and say, I was not able to meet my target because I could not plan, or I was not able to plan. No, it's your job. Do the part of planning. Whatever planning is required in order to meet your targets or your job description, you have to do that. And employee is expected to do that. He has to organize the work. Organizing means, for example, if you're a team or a department, you have to organize and make sure that the work is distributed, everything is, all the factors are taken into account, people have been delegated the work, and other things have been done for it. It is your job to delegate the work. If you have juniors and you have a target, you have to make sure that you break the target up into sub-targets and delegate that to different people underneath you. You can't make an excuse later on that you were not able to achieve your target because your juniors did not meet their own targets. No, that's your job. It's your job to make sure you have assigned some targets to the juniors and the juniors do achieve their targets. And when they achieve their targets, your target will automatically be met. So it's your job to delegate the work. It's your job to establish procedures. What that means is you have been given a target. Sometimes the target, and you have delegated the work and you have some staff. But if the staff don't know what is the procedure to be followed to do the work, if they don't know how to do the work, how can they do it? So it is your job, since you are the holder, you are the manager, you are the person whose target is we are talking about. It is your job to establish the required procedures so that you will know and all your delegates will know what is the procedure they are expected to follow, which will lead to the targets being met. Absence of procedures will be considered as a non-performance of responsibilities by the concerned manager or the person who is supervising. It's part of manager role to motivate juniors towards the target. As a manager, you have been given the target. The juniors are thinking, well, that's the manager's target. If the target is not met, manager will have to answer. Why should I worry? It's the manager's job to make them worry. And how he does that is, whatever his targets are, he sets sub-targets and he delegates them. And then he also has to motivate those people. So what is the most common motivator available in most organizations is the performance evaluation. So he lets them know how the evaluation, their performance will be evaluated, and just making sure that they will complete their part of the targets, which will help him achieve his own target. So you have to motivate the juniors towards the target. And anything else that need to be done to motivate, it is the manager's job to make sure he motivates his juniors. It's no excuse for the manager to say later on, sorry, I couldn't meet my target because I could not motivate my staff, or my staff could not be motivated. Well, it's your problem. You have to find a way to motivate your staff. It's your job to coach or empower your employees. If your employees don't know how to do the work, if they don't have the required skills, procedure we established on the top, but if they don't have the required skills, it is your job to make sure you provide them coaching, training, or whatever else is required in order to make sure they know how to do the work. If an employee doesn't know how to do the work, no amount of delegating, no amount of motivating will going to work for him, because he simply doesn't know how to do the work. So it's the manager's job to make sure that the people under him are provided the coaching or the training that is required, and they should know how to do the work. Irrespective of all the things that we have done on the top by the manager, problems will happen, risk will materialize. These risks could be human risk, employees not getting along together, people not working as a team, interpersonal conflicts, technical problems, machine breakdowns. It is a part of manager's job to solve these problems. No excuses that our machine broke down so I could not meet my target. No excuses. It's your job to make sure that the machines don't break down, and if they break down, that they are repaired in times such that the targets are not impacted. It's your job to build teams. If without building teams, you won't be able to achieve your target. So it's part of the manager's job to build teams to achieve, if teams are essential to achieve the target. It's the manager's job to evaluate and reward juniors. This is also the way we normally motivate employees, through the evaluation system and rewarding system that we have at our disposal. It is the manager's job to run his evaluation and rewarding system such that leads to motivating staff and getting the work done. It is the manager's job to report progress periodically as required by the organization's standard operating procedures, maybe quarterly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually. Report progress on what is the progress towards those targets. It's the manager's job, or it is your job, to coordinate with your stakeholders to get their cooperation. It won't work if at the end of your year of work, during performance evaluation, you make an excuse that you were not able to meet the target because you did not get cooperation from the stakeholders. Well, it's your job. It's your job to do whatever is necessary to get the coordination from the stakeholders. beg, borrow, exchange, do whatever you need to do with the stakeholders to get the cooperation, to meet your targets. Your targets you have to meet. And all those processes that you need to achieve your target and everything else. So this is 11 is not complete, but any other process that you need to have to achieve your target, that is part of your job. So this slide, even though the heading of the slide is a manager role, but what it means is every employee in the organization has a job description, has certain targets that he has to meet based on the job description, and it is his job to make sure that those targets are met. And as he's meeting those targets, he'll be doing these things that has to be done, and he has to resolve them. And if he does them all right, he will achieve his targets. If he does all these things right, 1 to 11, and any other ones, if he does them right, he is going to meet his targets. Can he now go to his manager and says, look, I deserve a promotion? And the manager says, why? He says, well, I met my target, I did my planning, I did my organizing, I did my delegating, I established procedures, and I met my target. The manager in such a case might in some cases say to you, well, that's the job. That's what you're paid for. Remember, when we hired you, we gave you your job description. We said, well, this is what we expect from you. And this is the amount we'll pay you, your salary. Is it okay with you? And you said yes. And what you're telling me is that you have achieved those targets. Well, if you achieve those targets, we have paid you for it. Why the promotion? Why the question of promotion? Why the question of recognition is coming? So in other words, the organization doesn't really feel obliged to reward you or recognize you for doing these things right or for achieving your targets. They might, reward you for doing this in order to encourage others. Yeah, okay, sure, maybe. But the organization doesn't feel obliged they should do anything more for you, because your deal with them was you will do these as your job description, meet the targets, and we will pay you your salary. So we can say that fulfilling these roles, meeting your targets, does not entitle you to any extra recognition, promotion, additional benefits, and other things. Then what is it that entitles you for more? And we said before is leadership. So let us see what is the leader's role. What are the things you do will be considered as leadership? What are the type of behaviors that you show on your work that will be considered as leadership behavior from your side? Meeting targets is a job. Doing a job description is part of your job. To understand leadership, maybe we could consider and think about some leader that we have, non-controversial leader, whom we are familiar with, and we ask ourselves, what made him a leader? What is it that he did different that gave him the recognition of a leader? And let's take somebody from not so old history, somebody who might have lived in this age. And one such person who comes to mind is South Africa's freedom fighter, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, also known as the father of the nation for South Africa, also who's credited with having helped South Africa become independent from apartheid. What did he do that deserved him that title? Was he the only person fighting for South Africa's freedom? He was part of an organization known as the African National Congress. African National Congress was there before Nelson Mandela joined it. It had leaders, old established leaders, who had been there before Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela spent 25 years plus of his life in jail as a part of the freedom struggle. But I would say 25 plus years in jail in relative comfort of the jail, in the sense that he was never put to hard labor. He was like almost used to say preventive custody type of arrest. He was staying in jail, but he was having access to newspapers and visitors and everything. Diaries. He was able to, from time to time, even his letters used to get smuggled out from jail and get published in UK newspapers. While there were other leaders of the African National Congress who were senior to Nelson Mandela, who had been there longer, who suffered even more years in jail, and they did not get the relative luxury of the type Nelson Mandela got. Many of them were tortured, many of them were killed, were executed for things that they did during the freedom struggle. And many of them went into labor camps. And they were also leaders of the African National Congress. So why is it that Nelson Mandela got the recognition while these other leaders didn't get much of it? They were recognized as leaders of the African National Congress in South Africa, but they never became the father of the nation. So if you think about them, all of them, Nelson Mandela, all the other leaders of the African National Congress, all of them were single-mindedly determined for the freedom of South Africa from apartheid. All of them were committed to the freedom. Some of these leaders wanted freedom at any cost. They were ready to burn, kill people. Any person who collaborates with the colonial government, they would put tires around his neck and burn him or kill him. They would riot. They said everything we need to do, use every tool, everything we can do, we should do in order to get freedom. While there was Nelson Mandela, one other leader of the African National Congress, he said, no, I am not for violence. I am in it for peaceful struggle for freedom. I will support only the peaceful struggle for freedom. Of course, the other leaders often made fun of him. Say, this guy is crazy. The colonial government has been ruling us or torturing us for 100 years, over 100 years. They are not going to leave by a peaceful struggle. They will keep on enjoying life in South Africa as long as we are peaceful. Nothing will happen till we kill a few people. Now, why was Nelson Mandela thinking about a peaceful struggle? Do you think he thought that he could get freedom quicker through the peaceful struggle? The answer to that is probably not. But he had a vision. Like all leaders, they have a vision. Vision means looking beyond the horizon. Of course, everybody saw the problem. And the problem is we need freedom from apartheid and from the colonial government. Everybody knew that we need freedom. There's no doubt about that. But while the other leaders stopped thinking after that, they said we'll manage the country after we get free. We'll make it democratic, we'll make this, we'll make that after we get free. Nelson Mandela said, no, not like that. He said he had a vision, and the vision told him, which he had obtained from his study of history. The study of history told him that we have to think also about what is going to happen after freedom. If we have a violent struggle for freedom, then after getting freedom, who will be the new rulers? They will be the people who had the biggest armies or biggest guns in their hand as freedom fighters. And these people would then point the gun at, once the foreigners are gone, they'll point the gun at their own people and take over power. And Nelson Mandela didn't want that. He wanted that after we get freedom, we should have the freedom should be handed over to the civil society, not to any armed group, to civil society. And we need to build a democratic system on that, based on people's rights and freedoms. And he knew that promoting armed struggle will be counterproductive, because then they will take over. Yes, the colonial power will leave in a hurry, and the new powers will take over with the guns, and then they will turn the guns on their own people. Also, he said freedom. Freedom from what? Well, they said, well, we want opportunity, economic opportunity for people. He said, well, if you drive away the foreigners, the economy is also going to go down with it. Then what is there left for the people? The other people, what will they get? Nothing. So we must keep these people. All these colonial powers, all these foreigners who are there, who are suppressing us today, we want to keep them in South Africa for many years, maybe forever. And slowly we must start sharing the resources of the country among all the people, including the natives. So for that, it is important that we don't do things in such a violent way that all these foreigners run away with freedom. So they must stay. So he had this vision. So what is a vision? I would like to define vision as a leadership vision as being able to look beyond the horizon. Horizon means all the things that are the problems that are visible to you with your eyes, or we can see it at the moment. That is your horizon all the time. And when you see a problem, solving the problem is a manager's job, because the technologies are all known, methods are known. Once you know the problem, we can work out the solution. And nowadays, of course, it's much easier, because you have Google and you have all the books and everything else. Knowledge is there, and you can utilize that knowledge and you can work out what is the most likely best solution for this problem. But what do you do about something which is not even a problem today? Who's going to see that? And that is what the leader's job. He's able to look beyond the horizon. And Nelson Mandela did it by being able to understand and appreciate after freedom what? And then what are the problems we'll face at that time, and how we'll solve them, and how we'll minimize those problems. And we must solve the current problem in such a manner that we are not going to get new problems beyond the horizon. And that's leadership. So I will say, in summarize, leadership as people who are able to look beyond the horizon. Horizon meaning all the problems that we can see today, they are within the horizon. That is a manager's job. And the leader's job is to try to understand what is lurking behind the horizon, what will become a problem tomorrow. And we have to make sure we prepare our organization today in such a manner that we will be able to face the challenges that tomorrow is going to throw from us. Once tomorrow means beyond the horizon situation will throw at us. So summarizing, leaders are people who are able to look beyond the horizon. But let us look at this in an organization. What is a leader's role? What does leadership mean? On a job, what does it mean? It means, of course, providing a vision for the future. It will mean future targets. Setting targets that are better than before is a starting of a leadership. So if you have a target of serving 10,000 customers this month, and if you meet 11,000 instead of 10,000, you are able to meet 11,000. Yeah, that's, you increase your target. Is a leadership. You improve the target. I'll call it small leadership. But leadership is about providing new directions and ideas. preparing the organization for the future. These ideas are the ideas that will prepare the organization for future challenges. So these ideas could be new work methods, which will lead to productivity, customer satisfaction, or something else. Maybe these new ideas may be adopting new technologies that are coming, and that will be beneficial to us. Maybe these new ideas could be introducing new products or services, or maybe these new ideas go into new markets. Anything new that will help move towards the organizational strategy. The key test is the direction of the idea, of the change has to be in the direction of organizational strategy, organization vision and mission. So new ideas. Generally, when we think about new ideas, when we are looking for new ideas, we start with the vision, mission, and the strategies, and then we ask ourselves, what are the ideas that we can implement today that will help us meet our strategic objectives or the strategies, and through the strategy, our vision and the mission. So leaders provide new ideas that are in the direction of organizational strategy. The new ideas that are not in the direction of organizational strategy, or are maybe in reverse of the direction of organization strategy, they are not leadership ideas unless we change our strategy. Changing a strategy could be a leadership idea, but suggesting an improvement that is against the organizational strategy is not a leadership idea. For example, if your organizational strategy is that we are going to improve our products and services by outsourcing some of our processes and services, that strategy has been decided. Now, if you come up with an idea which says, let us do this in-house, obviously what the idea you're suggesting is, maybe there might be some merit in it. You may make a proposal and maybe you may show there's some advantage in that proposal, some benefits will come to your organization, but it will still not be considered a strategy or an idea in the strategy direction because it is opposite to the strategy. So what we need to do is, before we make that idea, we have to make a proposal to change the strategy. And once you change the strategy, then we can give that new idea, because otherwise your idea is against the organizational strategy and probably not a good idea. Provide new direction or new ideas. But anybody can come up with new ideas. Anybody can stand up and say, we should do this. Anybody can stand up and say, we should be more customer satisfaction oriented. Anybody can stand up and say, we should be more safety conscious. Anybody can stand up and say, we should become global. Anybody could stand up and say, we should make these new products and services, which some other company is also making. Anybody can say that. Easy to talk. Talk is easy. But is talk leadership? Well, people who talk, who give ideas, they could be leaders or they could be hypocrites. Leaders are those who walk the talk. The idea they are suggesting, they have an intention to implement it, maybe in their own personal life starting. Hypocrites are those who talk like the leader, whose idea is the same as the leaders, but they have no intention to implement it. They have said this before, they got an opportunity to implement it, they never implemented it, and they are saying it again. So one of the first things after suggesting an idea that will make somebody a leader as compared to a hypocrite is, does he walk the talk? Does he apply that improvement, which idea he is suggesting, does he apply it in his own work if it is relevant? For example, if you suggest a new idea, and your idea is we should be more customer satisfaction oriented, but your colleagues who hear your idea, they can recall instances where they saw you treating your customers in not so friendly manner. Then what they will think is, oh, this guy is a hypocrite. He talks about customer satisfaction, but he never does customer satisfaction. I have never seen him do anything for customer satisfaction. And in fact, I've seen him do the opposite of it. Or maybe they think if somebody is a junior, he thinks he's also your customer, internal customer. And he says, when I go to meet him, when I go and talk to you, the way you treat me, not really like a customer. So in his mind, you're a hypocrite, not a leader. So difference between a hypocrite and a leader is very small. They talk the same. To the ear, they sound the same. But the difference is, leaders walk the talk. What they say, they do. By walking the talk or doing what you say, you are building credibility. So walking the talk builds personal credibility. People know you are credible, that they know that what you are saying, you really mean it. And you're not a hypocrite. Another thing leaders have to do, once they walk the talk, when they implement in their own life, then they should also understand and know how to manage the implementation of the new idea or direction. They should know how to implement the idea. What does manage the implementation mean? Manage the implementation means all the things that we said before was a part of manager role. The leader must do it for his new idea. For the new idea, what were those? For the new idea, the manager must think about how to plan the work, what policies and procedures will be required, how will motivate people, what sort of teams will need to be built, what sort of coaching will be required, what type of cooperation will be required from stakeholders, and so on. So all those items that we mentioned under the manager role, they become the part of the leadership work with reference to the improvement idea. The same things, when they are done to achieve the operational targets, that they are manager role, but the same things when done to achieve the new idea is a leadership role. So they must manage the implementation of the idea. So they must know, they must be able to answer questions, they must know how planning will be done, how organizing will be done, how coaching will be done, and so on. Then, so that the employees then feel that this guy knows what he's talking about. When you suggest an idea, people will ask you questions, which will sound like opposition. But your answer to the question, those questions will relate to various implementation stages, multidiscipline questions. To various stages of the implementation, you will come across them, and you have to be able to answer those questions. Otherwise, not considered as a great idea. In leadership, we had number 2 was providing new direction or new ideas. But doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how intelligent you are, if you only depend on your own ideas, own brain to give you the directions or ideas, you are going to utilize a very few of those ideas. Many of the main ideas, big ideas, you may totally miss out. So one of the essential requirements of leadership is you must set up a system to encourage ideas, innovations in juniors. You have to set up a system which encourages the juniors that when they have a new idea, they rush to you and they want to come and tell you about it. And when you receive that idea or hear the idea, then you can then decide whether this idea is really a strategic idea or not, is really in the important strategic direction or not. Of course, the way you handle it is going to be very important as a leader. When somebody comes with an idea, he's very enthusiastic about it. He thinks it's a very smart idea. You hear it. You have to be appreciative. Say thank you very much for the idea. We will consider it. And when you consider it and you realize it's not really in the strategic direction, you may not take it further. But if you think it is in the strategic direction, then you may decide, yes, maybe you probably need to analyze this idea in more detail. And maybe you want to set up a team of 2 people or 3 people who are going to analyze this idea in more detail. And when you do that, as a part of the team, as a way of motivating the person who gave the idea, you may want to put him in the team. Or if that person doesn't have the competency or the capability to be in the team or doesn't want to be in the team, then what we do is we give him credit for having given the original idea, and then we let this team do the investigation to try to see is it really an idea worth pursuing or not. But we give this person the credit for it, which will motivate him to rush to you with any new ideas that he may have in the future, because he knows that you are not going to steal it, you are going to give him the credit for it, of at least the originator of the idea. Similarly, those people who analyze it, they will get credit for analyzing it. Those who implement it will get the credit for implementing it, and so on. So this is a manager role. So you saw these 2 roles, manager role and leadership role. Now, if these types are not so clear, don't worry. The next slide will clarify. What are we heading towards? Okay. So let's see what the next slide is. Of the next slide, we put both of these manager and leader role together on one slide for you to see. Let's move on from there. It's the same thing. We move on. Next is, what does the organization need? Does it need leaders or does it need managers? And once we answer that question, then it will become apparent why this discussion about managers and leaders was necessary as a part of the introduction. So what does the organization need? Does it need managers or leaders? Well, it needs both. And the effort spent at various levels is different. For example, if somebody is the CEO or the managing director of a company, he would probably be expected to spend 95% of his time on leadership role and 5% certain time on managing. In other words, in order to help achieve the operational goals, he's spending 5% of the time. In trying to prepare the organization for the future, make improvements, prepare the organization for the future, develop the strategy, vision, mission, 95% of his time he'll be spending on that. If you go down the organization ladder, if you go to the director level, maybe 80% of his time he's spending on leadership activities and 20% on manager activities. 20% on time on trying to make sure the operational goals are being achieved. And if there's any problem, helping solve those problems. So the CEO spends 5% of his time, director spends 20% of his time on manager role. And you go down the organization ladder, then let's say you have a general manager, he'll spend probably 40% on leadership role and 60% on managing role. So general manager, we can say, will be spending 60% of his time or majority of his time on trying to make sure the operational targets are met. And minority of his time on leadership is trying to prepare the organization for the future. And similarly, you can go down, department manager or business unit head, maybe spending 15% of his time on leadership and 85% on trying to meet the department's goals, production goals or service goals. If you go further down, maybe the section head might be spending 5% time on leadership and 95% of time on managing, on making sure that the operational targets are met. So you look at the section head and look at the CEO, opposite in terms of time. While the CEO spends 95% of his time on leadership, section head spends only 5% of his time on leadership. And you can go down further. Well, first of all, let me say that these percentages are relative only. They depend on the organization, the type of organization, how fast changes are happening inside the organization, how technology is changing, how customers are changing, and so on. For example, if you are in the mobile phone business, maybe this chart makes sense. If you are in mobile phone or mobile services, maybe this chart makes sense. CEO will be expected to spend 95% of the time on leadership, looking for new ideas, new methods, new technologies, new things, new challenges, and so on, and 5% time on managing. But if it was a public utility like a water supply department, local authority water supply department, then 95% of time for the CEO probably doesn't make sense. Water technologies don't change. The water grid is already there. Small changes would be required to be made. Some preparation for the future may be there. So you may say the leadership might just be, leadership role as we have defined might only be 10% or 15%, and 85% might be manager role, because the organization is not dynamic at all. Things don't change there. Technology, customers don't change. Same people stay there if there is no competition. The network is still almost the same. Small improvements are being made from it from time to time. So the percentages are relative only. Relative means relative between that the CEO will spend more time on leadership, director will spend a little bit less time, general manager will spend less time, department less time on leadership, and section head will spend the least time on leadership. But now let's think about other people in the organization. Lowest people in the organization, at the lowest level of the organizational ladder. What might be at the lowest level? You could have a T-boy, you could have a driver, you could have cleaning staff. How much time they should spend in terms of the management, and a percentage of time on management, and how much on leadership? We might be tempted to say that for T-boy, driver, maybe 0 on leadership, 100% on managing, that he should focus on doing his work. Driver should focus on driving well and safely. Leadership, not much required. But wait a minute. Let us say we're talking about T-boy. Let's say if you still have T-boys. Or, yeah, T-boys. Or service staff. And let's say you have 4 service staff in your organization. All of them know their work. What is the service they have to provide to all the employees? Keeping the coffee machines running, maybe delivering coffee, maybe making sure water supply is maintained, and anything else which is considered as a service. But out of those 4, one of the service employees from time to time comes with an idea. Sometimes he says, well, instead of buying this model of machine, if you buy this other model of machine for the coffee, this will be much better for the customer. The coffee will be hot, it will taste better. And some of his ideas have been adopted over a period of time. Sometimes he has suggested the type of cups to use that we are using for the machine. And he's suggesting a new type of cup, and he says this must be easier and convenient for people. And we have accepted and we have made the change. And now you have been given a job. And the job is that out of those 4 service staff, we want to promote one to be the head of the service team, or the team leader of the service staff. Whom will you select? Your mind will automatically and should automatically go towards that person who has been suggesting the ideas, improvement ideas. Your mind will immediately go there and say, oh, that guy, I think that guy is what we should promote and make him the head of the service staff. Why? Because he has shown some leadership. So even though we can't say 0% leadership, so we have to say maybe his leadership is 0.001% of his job is leadership, and 99.99% of his job is 99.99% of his job is managing. But when it comes to recognition, when it comes to reward, when it comes to promotion, we are going to focus more on the 0.001% of his work rather than the 99.99% of his work. But of course, the 99.99% of his work should be at least to a satisfactory level of no complaints, I would say. So as long as he can meet the standard of no complaints about his 99.99% of his work, when we are considering promotion, we will consider the person who has new ideas. Why? Why that is the right way of thinking? Because as we look at that table in front of us, as an employee goes higher in the organizational ladder, we expect more leadership from him. As the employee rises higher in the organizational hierarchy, we expect more leadership from him. So somebody who doesn't provide anything at the level he is presently in, how can we consider him for promotion? Similarly, section heads. Imagine there are 4 section heads. And in terms of performance, they're all the same. But one of them, from time to time, has been coming up with improvement ideas. And some of his improvement ideas have been accepted. Now, when it comes to a question that we have to promote one section head to be a manager, which section head will we think about? And the obvious is that section head who has shown more leadership and his otherwise performance is okay. Because it is as we go higher in the organizational ladder, we need more leadership. So somebody who has not even have 5% leadership at the section head level, if he has been even less than 5 as compared to others, how will he provide 15% leadership effort in the next higher position? And that is why it's important to show leadership. And that's why what we mean is leadership is what's going to get promotion. Okay. One more thing we have to ask about. One more thing we have to think about is, as we go back to as we come to the end of this idea, program or this introduction, we must ask ourselves, how much time do we spend on leadership and how much time we spend on manager tasks in our work? We must ask ourselves. Based on that chart we have about manager and leaders, we should ask ourselves how much percentage of our time we are spending on manager tasks and how much time we are spending on leadership tasks. And the answer is the problem. 80% of people, employees will tell us they are so busy at their work trying to finish their targets that they get no time for leadership or making improvements or thinking about improvements even. That they are so busy with their work. 80% of staff is going to say that to you. I'm so busy with my work that I get no time for leadership. Probably only 10% of people would say that they had putting in some effort in terms of leadership. And that is why 80% of the people are going to be dissatisfied all their life. Because they have not shown leadership and they will be deprived of the benefits that come from leadership, including promotion, recognition, and other things. And what we are going to do in this program is, if you think about the 4-level programs, online training programs, in level 4 of the programs, which module is called leadership, this is what we'll try to promote in the participants, or trying to communicate at that stage is, in your domain area, how do you provide leadership? This will be level 4 of the online training programs. Very important aspect. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll meet again tomorrow. It's also a good time to choose a case study for yourself. So as we go through the program materials, we want to make it practical. We want to relate it to some actual job challenge that you have, So at this moment, you may want to think today, this evening, as you go back to your hotel rooms, you have to ask yourself or choose a case study for yourself on which you will apply all the things that we have learned. A good choice is always your own organization. So if you take a case study from your own organization, or if you take a case study or a particular project or a particular problem or particular your own section or department as your case study, that would probably be a perfect idea. Thank you. Thank you very much. From Gear Training Global Limited. Wish you a best of health and stay safe. Thank you.